This is basically how to build a Lego without actually doing all the specs. So what we're going to be doing is you can go online and find pretty much any of the dimensions of a Lego block. And when you're doing that, you basically want to make sure that you have the right relationship. So anytime you're doing something that's, life and based off of measurements, you want to keep those measurements accurate. So in this case, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going into Window. We're going to go into Settings, Preferences, and you're going to go into Settings, and you're going to see instantly here that this is set up for centimeters, and that will work for our purposes. Now, I don't have a reference drawn. I'm going to just do this by the numbers so that we get this done, but you can kind of load up your own image and work directly off of that. But the first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be looking at I'm not going to model everything individually, if that makes sense. I'm not going to model it all out of one block. I'm going to model it out of pieces so that I can use those pieces for different types of blocks. So the first thing is that I need to understand that the average segment here is 8 centimeters by 8 centimeters. So I'm just going to go here and I'm going to do 8 millimeters by 8 millimeters. So I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to go 8 by 8, and that's going to be my base for my top of my block. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off my grid because it just bothers me when I'm modeling. And so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 segments. So 2 by 2, and that's going to give me that segment. And then what I'm going to do is go into face mode, and I'm going to grab these faces here, and it's going to look a little bit wonky, but I'm going to then go in and extrude the face, which I can actually go in here, hold in scale, hold shift, and I'm going to extrude that downward like so. All right, so this is at 1. So this is like so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go circularize. So circularize is basically going to give me the component that I need to basically build that up. Now, these little blocks are a radius of 2.4 centimeters. So I'm going to just go off of this here. I'm going to go into object mode real quick here. And just to create a good size with that, I'm going to go here, and I'm going to create just this little hunk here, and the radius for that is basically 2.4 millimeters, so 2.4, and the height is going to be 1.8. So that is my ultimate size here. And so if you look at it, this is kind of centered here, but I'm not worried about that right now. What I'm worried about is that this kind of. So, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to hold down V, and I'm going to snap that V down like so. And then I'm going to just raise this up. I can snap it in there, but that's my placeholder. And I'm going to go into this tool here. I'm going to go back into my faces, which is already pre-selected. And I'm going to just scale this down a little bit. Now, I'm not, it doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but what I want to make sure is that this fits the needs of what I'm doing. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into move, and I'm going to shift and extrude that upward to basically fit that top piece. Now, what this just did for me is this created a button, if you will. I'm going to go to object mode, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to just create a new layer real quick, right click, add selected, hit feed. So we can go back to our shaded view, and so you can see now that I've got this. But when I hit 3 on it, it basically turns into a kind of an ugly bump. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to basically go in there into the multi-cut, and I'm going to do a couple different things. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a little edge, and as soon as I do, it's going to round that edge around. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little edge there, and that's going to basically create a little bit more groove. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold control and I'm going to get as close as possible. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to click that in there. And so that is going to give me the rough kind of idea of what my edge loop is going to look like. Now you can see here that it's creating quads, everything's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit tab and I'm just going to paint this top circle here, and I'm just going to scale that down just a hair. Okay, I'm not worried about my elements, but what that's going to do is sharpen that edge. So now you can see here that I have pretty much got a good enough kind of edge loop here of my piece. So this is the top of my piece. Now what I can do is I can grab and go into object mode here, and you'll notice that I have my basically piece here that's centered. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change that. I'm going to hit insert, I'm going to hold in V, and I'm going to grab that and snap it to this corner here. So by snapping it to that corner now, I can hit insert again, and now what I can do is ultimately have another piece. So now if I hold shift down, it's cloning it, basically drag it over, and if I hold V down, I can snap it to that edge. So now I have basically a 2x2 block here. And we can always measure this and kind of make sure things work. But I'm going to grab this piece here, and I'm going to hold shift down. I'm going to move it over here, hold V, and snap it to that. Now because I've got two pieces here, I need to grab just one of those, hold V, and snap it to that. So now I have my 2x2 block. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all four, and I'm just going to clone them over here. So I'm going to move them over, and then you can see that it's a little bit awkward. So I'm going to grab each one and snap it in place, holding V like so. And that creates the top part of my piece. I'm going to take one of these pieces and I'm going to clone it off to the side here. I'm not worried about that. But what I can do now is basically take these pieces. So I'm going to grab all these pieces like so, and I am going to attach them together. So by attaching them together, I'm going to go to mesh, combine. That's all one piece. I'm going to go right click vertices, and I'm going to grab all this middle joints here. So I'm going to just merge the vertices here, and that's a good enough threshold. I'm going to go okay. So that looks good. And you can always see how many you have. So I have 9 selected right now. If I go this way here, I have 9. And if I hit G, which is the last action, I basically merged these together. So I'm just going to go through and merge these pieces together and hit G all the way through. And so now I've got one piece, and I can take that one piece. Now, the next thing I have to do is I'm going to do the underside of my piece. So the underside of my piece is ultimately a post that comes all the way downward, but what happens is it comes down, and I'm going to clone that over like so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate that in 180 degrees. So it's going to be upside down. So if you look at your Z axis, I'm just going to rotate it 180, and it's going to flip upside down like so. So that is perfectly fine. And then what we're going to do is we are going to kind of edge loop here. So I'm going to do a couple different things. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to face, grab these 4 faces, and I'm going to shift extrude, and that's going to scale that inward like that. And then I'm going to shift extrude again a little bit more, and I'm going to shift extrude it up just a hair, and then I'm going to shift extrude it up quite a bit, and I'm going to shift extrude it again up a little bit more, and then I'm going to grab those, and I'm going to shift extrude it, scale it inward just a hair. Now when I hit subdivision on this, you'll notice it basically creates a nice thing. Now what happened is I actually have my edge loop here you can see that it's a little bit off. So I'm just going to grab this and kind of pull that down underneath there like so. And so that gives me the underlying structure of my piece. Now with this on the corner piece here like so, what I can do now is I can change this again. I can hit insert. Actually, not even worrying about that, because these are, if you look at the math on the edge loops, these are ultimately a little bit bigger. So we need to change the scale on that. So I'm going to bring that over. So if you look at these, I'm going to just unhide this layer here, and you'll see that move this off to the side. So this piece, this little piece here, is basically 2.4, and then it's 3.5 center. So I'm going to just do a couple different things here. I'm going to change this to, I'm going to grab this and I'm going to go into my attribute editor, and I'm going to go into my poly cylinder, and I'm going to make sure my radius is, we're going to call it 3.25, and that's going to give me that center. And then I'm going to grab that center and just snap it centered down like that. So my cylinder here now needs to be about that size. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to grab the vertices. Oops. Just make sure I got the right one. Grab the vertices, and I'm going to grab everything right in there like so. And we are just going to scale this. Scale this a little bit bigger like so. So roughly that size. It can be a little bit bigger. We're going to average it out. And so you can always play around with the numbers and things like that, but ultimately that is what I need to have happen. And then if you are struggling, if the size isn't right, we can always lower that until the size is right. And if you want to look at it from a different view, we can kind of basically make sure that that lines up. All right. So now that this piece is done here, and I'm going to go into object mode, and you'll notice that this is basically like this. So I'm going to just move one of these over, and I'm going to clone one here real quick, and then I'm going to do what basically is the snapping. So I'm going to just move this over, and I'm going to clone 1 and 2, and then I'm going to grab this one, hold in V, snap, grab this one, hold in V, and snap. And so again, we're going to take these 3 pieces here, we're going to go into mesh, combine, and then I'm just going to make sure these are stitched all together. So right click vertice and make sure that all 3 verts are snapped, shift, merge, shift right click, merge, and we're just going to merge vertices here like so. You'll notice that something else was grabbed and it screwed up, so we can undo that, and we're just going to hold in control and unselect those 2, shift right click, merge together, and we're going to basically merge those down to that point. So do the same thing over here, and you'll notice I have 6, hit G, and it merges it to 3. So we're good with that. Then what we're going to do is we are going to go to object mode. We're going to take these 2 pieces, and I'm just going to do this in my visual mode here in the top view. So what I'm going to do is first get rid of the grid. I don't like looking at it. I'm going to go move, and I'm going to go move, and you'll notice that these are exactly centered. So all I have to do is snap these 2 dead center like that. Now what I'm going to do is lower this a little bit here like so, and I'm going to go back to the space. I just want that little bit of space in there, so that basically plastic looks good. And then what I'm going to do is do a couple different things. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab the object, grab the edge mode here, grab the cylinder, and then I'm going to go into the top view here, and again looking at my wireframe, I'm just going to scale. So hit scale, and I'm going to scale this outward. So it's going to be something like that, and it's going to break your geometry a little bit, but that's okay. And I'm going to scale it to something like that. So maybe a little bit wider, something along the lines like that. So that is the rough estimate. And there's an exact measurement here, and you guys can find that. I think it's 1.2. So we can do that, but it's going to take me time to show you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to these two pieces here, and I'm going to go into mesh, combine. Now that's one piece. Then I'm going to go to edge. I've already got that one selected. I'm going to hold shift and double click that. So that's going to give me that edge. And then what I'm going to do is simply drag it down like so. So now this needs to be dragged down 9.6 centimeters. So we can either measure that with another block. I'm just going to go like so, and that's my base. I'm not worried about it right now, but that's my base. And if you again need to kind of measure something, we can simply go into a block here and like so, and then I'm going to just move that up to basically meet that grid point, and then we're going to go into the polycube shape, and we're going to just say 9.6, and so that is the height of my Lego block. And again, I'm not being super precise here, but that's okay. I'm going to go into my edge mode, grab this bottom edge, move it up just to be about the same size. Grab this by hitting shift, and then let's drag that down to about 9.6. That's my block. And then I'm going to go in and do a couple different things. So you'll notice if we go into transparent mode, we've got these three here. So I'm going to go into vertices. I'm going to grab these vertices here, and I'm going to pull those down to about the same size too. And then now you'll notice that we have a object level here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to edge again, and I'm going to make sure my objects are selected, and then shift right click. And if we do bridge, you'll notice you'll get an error. You can't do it that route because it's just not going to figure out that structure right off the bat. So let's do this the other way here. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this like this. So I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to go bridge, and then I'm just going to go and hit G all the way through. It's a little bit more tedious than I want. You can select things if you want, but you can see that this is not going to work well because things aren't lining up properly, right? So we need to figure out how to adjust that mesh so that things line up properly. And the easiest way to do this is to ultimately, we can just start kind of, I'm going to do the corners first, like so, and you'll notice that like so, and then so I've got two pieces like this, like that, and I'm just cross-setting these. Now this is not the perfect way to do it, but it will get the job done. And you'll notice that undo that, grab that one and that one. So, and then we're just going to kind of step these in. Now, is this the best way to do it? No, by any means. But what it is going to do is going to give me the end results, and that will basically, have a nice cut. Now, then what we're going to do is we've got our Lego block, but the problem is when we subdivide it to make it look nice, this corner and even this corner kind of looks ugly. So we need to basically go in and add some edge loops. So the first one is we're going to add an edge loop up here, bam, like so. And you'll notice that as soon as I do, those corners look a lot nicer. Same thing down here. We're going to hit Control, add an edge loop, and again, you'll notice that they harden up quite a bit. We're going to do one on the bottom here, like that, and you'll notice that things round out. We just need the corners here. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is, you'll notice these green pops here, these green faces. That's actually a simple thing. We can just go to geometry. So I'm going to just right click, I'm going to go assign new material. We're just going to do a Arnold AI standard surface, and that'll fix it. It's just a shader glitch. So the next thing I need to do is I need to fix these rounded faces. And so ultimately the fixing of the rounded faces is a couple of different ways. I need more geometry in the corners so that when I do the subdivision here, it will hold that mesh. So there's a couple different ways that we can do it. We can either kind of cut things around here, which basically isn't that big a deal. We can also try to do a multi-cut here. The problem is you can see the edge, the curving is kind of broken, so what that's going to give us structural issues as well. So what we can do now is we got to add more edges to these corners. So what we can do is we can kind of flip this. So I'm going to do a multi-cut here, and I'm just going to bring up the corners here, and I'm going to click that corner like so, click that corner like so, bring that, a second here, bring that down like that, bring that, oops, and sometimes again it doesn't like cutting there, and then I'm just going to go into here. So by doing that, we now have a edge loop, and you'll notice that that one kind of starts working a little bit better. We're going to come back up, so I'm going to just come down here, come up here to the edge, like so. If I just hit enter, that will kind of start our new thing. So I'm just going to go up here, and like so. So with that in mind, you'll notice that that hedge now turns into a nice hard edge. The corners stay good, and it basically works for my purposes. Are I taking into consideration on the n-gons? Yes, we should be fine on n-gons, but I do have some triangles, and I can go around and kind of play around with those. But for all intents and purposes, I now have a building block that I can now use to make many other blocks. I've got the upper and the lower that I've cloned, and so I can go through and kind of work with those. And then ultimately I just need to clean up this kind of area here and make sure everything kind of works accordingly. So I'm just going to go up here, get to the corner, looks like one of my corners is not sealed together, so we got to fix that. And if you run into a problem where like an edge loop is not basically pushed together in the proper way, ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that things are connected together. So if you see when I move this, things aren't connected properly together. So you need to grab this vertex, and you'll notice that I should be good on that one. I should be good on there. So we should have that point in there. So again, when I subdivide, everything looks good. Looks like there might be some issues with the other face rounding here, a little bit more than I want, and so ultimately I might have to go through and cut in some more supporting edge loops in the corners here, and that's simple as going into my multi-cut here and going from this corner to this corner right there, like so. So just adding those edge loops in there now gives me that nice curve. So I'm just going to go through and finish up the other two corners, and I'm going to make sure that the edge loops look good, and we'll kind of go through and clean up some stuff. But otherwise, this is how to start with a base Lego. All right, now that that's done, I'm gonna go in and finish up my edge loop here. All right, so now when I subdivide, you'll notice that my block pretty much meets the standard of this. Now, to basically stack blocks together, I would find it easier if I hit insert and I basically move the align points by holding V down to this corner here and then hit insert again. So I can hit this, and so now if I want to clone this, I can simply hold shift down, grab this corner, and snap it accordingly. And so you can see here that I've got this nice edge loop going on like so. And then if I want to move it again, I can move it all the way up here, holding V, and I can snap it to one of the corner pieces, or however I need to basically kind of put that together. So you can see here that this creates a nice corner. Now, what else I can do? I've got my edge loop here, like so. What I can do is I can grab this edge loop like this, and we can just. You'll notice that I've got my edge loop here, like so. That looks good. And if you want to add another edge loop in there, we can simply add an edge loop from this inner corner here, so like that, to this inner corner here, that one, to that one. And there we go, and that will give me a nice kind of edge loop as well. So I can have a high poly model going back and forth, toggling back and forth, and so ultimately that is how to create my Lego, and I hope that helps you out. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.